Okay, so thank you all very much for joining this afternoon session on AI on board, steering your productivity to new heights with Microsoft Copilot. So this afternoon session, we'll have a look at a bit of a high-level overview of Copilot and also something called Copilot Studio. We'll have a little bit of a look at differences in between. What's the difference between Copilot, ChatGPT and Gemini? I'll take you through a few examples of using Copilot within the Microsoft applications. So examples of using Copilot within Word, within Excel, within PowerPoint, and also within Outlook. We'll also look at using Copilot in its standalone web app within Microsoft 365. A little bit of a look at some prompting, so how best to create your prompts or questions for Copilot. A little bit of overview of data security considerations when using Copilot, and then a couple of additional ones to the original agenda. Something that's very recently been released this year is Copilot agents. So Copilot agents can be used specifically within things like SharePoint sites. And then we'll finish off just with a little bit of an introduction to another 365 application called Viva Engage, which sort of dovetails very nicely within Copilot. So Copilot and Copilot Studio. So Copilot itself, it's Microsoft's AI, it's conversational AI, it's built into Microsoft 365. So Copilot touches everything Microsoft 365. So it can go and access all of your available data within SharePoint, within Teams, within OneDrive, within your Outlook mailbox. And as I've put at the bottom, it's an AI assistant for general tasks and productivity. Now, Copilot Studio is a slightly more advanced tool, probably more aimed at developers. But Copilot Studio will let you create custom chatbots that you can put onto your web page. You can build them specifically to answer particular types of questions and give people guidance and answers. As I've mentioned, developers can build on existing capabilities. So with Copilot Studio, it's not just Copilot helping you be productive. It's a more advanced tool that you can customize to suit your own specific needs. Just before I move on, just to make everybody aware of it and to allay any sort of fears that anybody might have. One myth around Copilot is that it's going to take people's jobs. It's not. The design of Copilot, in its name suggests it. It's your digital assistant. It's a co-pilot. It's not a pilot that's going to take over your job. So the purpose of it is to help you be more productive and save time in your day-to-day work. So differences between Copilot, ChatGPT and Google's Gemini. So as I'd mentioned, Copilot is built into Microsoft's 365 ecosystem, as they call it. So Copilot, it's used for business tasks, productivity within 365 apps. ChatGPT, there are two versions. There is a free and there is a chargeable version. Used for content creation, so document creation. You can also use it for, if you're using for coding, you can help it with writing code. And then Gemini is built into Google's tools. So it's good for more creative tasks, writing, brainstorming. You've probably seen on the TV adverts, you can ask it questions. Google's Gemini can access Google Docs and Gmail. So the big difference between the three of them is Copilot lives in your business world 365 ecosystem. That's not to say that ChatGPT and Gemini aren't as good. They're just different options. Okay. So what we'll have a look at is some examples of where you might use Copilot within your Microsoft 365 apps. So these are the apps that we're using day to day. So within Word, you might have a lengthy document. you could ask Copilot to detail headline topics from a document. It might be you've got a 30-40 page report. You don't want to read through the whole thing. Copilot can be used. Just pick out the headline topics. Give me a brief summary of the content of a document. Or you could ask it to create you a document based on a particular subject. This is handy a typical thing you might ask an assistant to do. So can you create me a basic outline on this particular subject? I'll then go through it, sense check it, and I'll beef it out a little bit. But Copilot can be used to give you that starting point. Within Excel, you can use it for creating formulas, visualizing data. You can get it to automatically format content. One of the things, especially with Excel, is you can ask Copilot to create your formulas for you. You don't need to go off and spend hours learning complex formulas. You can ask Copilot to do it for you. PowerPoint, you can ask it to create a presentation. One of the demonstrations that I'll use is getting Copilot to create me a presentation from a document that I've already created. You can ask it to create a presentation on a particular subject. It will go off, it will look through your internal files and on the web to find information and create you a presentation. Outlook, one of the most common uses is with Outlook, you can ask Copilot to summarize a really long email chain. It's absolutely invaluable if, for example, you're copied into a very long email chain and you just want a quick summary of what's this actual conversation about. I've been copied in part way through. I don't want to spend 20 minutes, half an hour reading through to glean what this conversation's about. Copilot will do it for you. You can also ask it to draft replies to an email, just to give you that starting point. So let's just move along to Copilot in 365 in the actual web app. So this you can also ask it, review your email and meetings, create you an actions list. As I say, Copilot is your digital assistant. So you can ask Copilot to go and review your email over the last week and pick out any highlight topics and tasks that you need to be dealing with. You might ask it to write a summary of a meeting that you couldn't attend. Copilot within Teams, it can be used to write up your meeting notes as well. Or if you've not been able to attend, you wanted to get a detail of what was discussed, were there any key tasks outlined within a meeting, Copilot can go and do that for you. Ask it for an update on communications with a colleague or a particular contact. Again, Copilot can go and look through your mail and Teams messages to pick up and collate updates and communications with key colleagues or contacts. Or you can simply use it to gather news and research from the web. So to save you trawling through multiple sites, you can ask Copilot to go and find information, collate it into a nice simple summary for you. So with regards to prompting, so the thing to ask for is you need to be clear and concise. So when you're asking Copilot to do something, you need to be very clear in what it is that you're asking for. Avoid ambiguous language. It uses these large language models. So you need to be very clear and specific into what it is that you want. And what you will find as you start to use it, a well-crafted prompt really does make a big difference to the quality of content that it's generated. Okay. Things like using specific keywords, include context of why you're doing it, and combining keywords will also help you achieve a better response. So I'm going to drop out of this and we'll have a look at a couple of examples. So I'm just going to go over into Word. So within Word, I've currently got Copilot effectively plugged into Word. So I open up a new document. Up at the top here, I've got Copilot. it's asking me, do I want to get insights from a file? Do I want to produce a summary of a document? Do I want to draft up a memo? Or I can tell it, this is what I want it to write. So I've got some preset examples that I'm going to use. So rather than you watching me painfully type slowly, wherever I can, I'll just copy and paste these across. Now, as I'd mentioned, Copilot can access all of your 365 data, so OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, etc. So just as a little bit of background information, in my OneDrive, I've got a folder with some Copilot files. So I've got an Excel spreadsheet and a couple of Word documents. Just to show you, I'm going to ask it to review this document called Word Module 1 Objectives. And it's just so that you're aware, this is sitting in a folder on my OneDrive. It could be sat in a folder on SharePoint. So if I jump back over to Word, so I'm going to ask it to detail the headline points from a document. So I'll just copy this. So I'm going to ask Copilot, I want to create a detailed content from, bear with me, that's better, I'll paste it into here, from, and if I use the Word Module 1, just double check what it was called, Objectives. Oops. And it will go off and create my draft for me. So in this case, I didn't need to tell Copilot where this document was. I just need to give it the name of it. And what it's done is it's gone through and it's picked out the very top level points that are listed in that document. Now, one of the things with Copilot is, what I would recommend is when you're using it, is to use this sort of iterative process of Q&A with it. So in this case, it's pulled out these bullet points. Down at the bottom, it gives me an option to say, do I want to keep it? Do I want it to regenerate it? I can delete it. Or I can go back and say, okay, yeah, this is good. It gives me an example of, can you make this more formal? So one thing to note with Copilot is it is conversational. So it's given me initial results. It's close to what I want, but what I can do is I can go back and fine tune it. So just as I would with a real, say thank you, can you make it more formal, please? And I will ask it to go and redefine it. And it will go off and it will work on it again. It will try to make it more formal for me. Now, if I remove this, so this is based on a document in my OneDrive. I'm going to remove this and I want to create a completely new document. So again, I'm going to go into Copilot. So asking it what I want to write. So as I'm discussing drafting, I'm just going to copy and paste an example. So I want Copilot to draft me a document detailing best practices in creating Copilot prompts in Copilot. I also tell it I want it to use single language and I want to avoid technical phrases. Copilot will now go off and it will create me a very quick guide on best practice. So as it mentions, using feedback, this iterative process, keep it concise. Ask for clarification where I need it. Review and revise it. an important one, be polite and respectful with it. So it gives me, and it's gone and found this from information on the web. So from having no idea how to create a prompt, I can use Copilot to give me a quick draft of how do I create good quality prompts. Now, another thing that I can use it for is I could ask Copilot to create me a user guide for something. So here's an example. I would like to, and I will type this one. So I want a user guide for the best practice using Microsoft, using changes in Microsoft Word. Okay. If I could type and tell it, I want it to avoid using technical language. So Copilot will now, it even tells me at the top, it's created a user-friendly guide, gives me an introduction, how do I turn it on, how do I make edits, using comments, reviewing them, responding, finalizing my document, even some additional tips. And again, there is this iterative process where I could go through and say, okay, can you put this into a numbered list for me so that I've got steps to follow, for example? And Copilot will work with me to go and make those changes for me. One really important thing to note when you're using Copilot is when it's generated results, there is a little note at the bottom that AI generated content may be incorrect. This is probably one of the most important things with it, of don't just blindly assume that everything that it's done is correct. It's your assistant. It doesn't know more than you do. So although it's given me this outline, I would still say, have a read through it, sense check it. Has it given you what you want? There is the thing of, as I say, you can go back and ask it to make changes, but don't just blindly go, that must all be right because Copilot has generated it. It may not be 100% correct. Okay, so that's using Microsoft Word. So I'll just minimize this, and I'm going to use this creating pivot tables file in Excel. So within Excel, I've got this demo file. So order reference department, order total, dates, delivery dates, etc. And it's just a list of information. So in this, I may well decide, okay, I want to highlight any entries in that order total column that are above 500. And I want them shaded in green, and I want them to show up in bold so that they stand out for me. So if I go and open up Copilot, and when I open it up within Excel, it gives me some prompts. Do I want to create some formulas? Do I want to summarize this with a pivot table or a chart? Do I want to get some deeper analysis? Do I want to apply some color and formatting? I can even ask it, how do I sum values based on a particular criteria? So in this case, I'm just going to copy this across. So what I want it to do is, I want it to format the order total column for entries over 500 with green shading and bold text. And I can send this chat message to Copilot, and it will go and look through my data. It'll interpret what I've asked it to do. And in a few seconds, it should return back. Okay, so it's gone and looked at my data. So it's found the outer edge, and it's applied conditional formatting rules for me. I didn't need to go and learn conditional formatting. So what it said is if the cell value is greater than 500, it's going to apply this to the order total column. It's going to be bold. It's going to be filled with green. The font color will be black. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. I can click apply. And it will go and apply that conditional formatting rule to my order total column. Now, because it's used Excel's built-in functionality of conditional formatting, if I changed one of these figures, so if I changed this one from 356 to 556, it automatically colors it for me because Copilot has created me a conditional formatting rule and it's applied it for me. So I don't need to learn about how to create conditional formatting rules. I can just ask Copilot, my digital assistant, to do it for me. Now, I've got another one within here that I want Copilot to help me with. So I've got my orders sheet. So I've highlighted anywhere with a highish value order total. The other thing that I want is I want it to check this references sheet. So for each individual order reference, I've got a status. Is it approved, invoiced, pending approval? So this order reference matches one in my references sheet. So again, I don't need to go off and learn a complicated Excel formula to generate a new column in here that tells me what is the status of my different order references. I can ask it to do it for me. So I'm just going to copy and paste this prompt and I'll show you what I'm going to ask it to do. So I want it to add a new column named status for each order reference by cross-referencing in the correspondence status in the references sheet. So I'll ask Copilot. So it's going to create me my new column and it will create me a formula. So what it then gives me is, tells me it's looked at my information and status, it retrieves the status of each order by matching the order reference in this table with the corresponding order reference in the order references table, which is on that references sheet. Tells me it's created me this new Excel function called XLOOKUP. I can expand this out and it gives me an explanation of how that function works. Gives me a preview. I'm happy with that because that's exactly what I wanted it to do. I can tell it to insert that column. And if I click onto any of these results, there's the XLOOKUP formula that it's created for me. It's added my new column. Again, I didn't need to go and spend hours trying to work out how to write an XLOOKUP function. I can ask Copilot to do it for me. It does it, but it also explains how it works. Even gives me additional. So do I want to suggest some conditional formatting? Do I want to show some data insights? So the possibilities are pretty much endless certainly with Word and Excel. So no longer do you need to spend hours trying to wrestle control of Excel to get it to calculate things. With Copilot, you can just simply, as long as you're concise and clear with what you want it to do, it will do it for you. Okay, let me just close this Excel file and we'll have a little look at PowerPoint. So I've got a blank presentation. So Copilot within PowerPoint. So if I go up and open up Copilot, and Copilot, just like within Excel, gives me some prompts of things that I might want to do. So do I want to create a presentation from a file? Do I want to create a presentation about, I can give it the subject that I want? How do I I can ask it. I can even ask it to coach me for best practices for creating good quality presentations. So what I'm going to ask it to do is I want it to create me a presentation based on a particular file. So if I choose this, so my prompt is create a presentation from, if you use / in your prompt, it then gives you the option of, I want it to go and find a file. It will look at anything that you've looked at recently. So I want it to create one from, and as you can see, as I start typing, it goes and finds documents. So I want it to find one from module 1, and I want it to pick this one up. So I want a presentation based on the content of my Word module 1 objectives document. And I can send. So Copilot goes and finds that file, reads the content of it, and it will start drafting me an outline. So it's generating my slides. Copilot within PowerPoint will even create me speaker notes to go along with it. And it's drafted me 15 slides. It's made some slight changes to headings. So it's created some speaker notes. It's even added some images to help my slide deck look more engaging. It's applied layouts and then does prompt me to say, I can use the designer to go and tweak this myself. So it gives me an agenda, gives me points that I can go through. Let's go through and find formatting page background elements, and it puts in an image. Now with this iterative process, it might be, I might ask it, can you add more images? Because it's only added a couple, sharing documents electronically. It's gone and found a Microsoft stock image that it can use. So with the iterative process, I might say to it, that's great, can you add more images? It will go and find some additional images. But as you can see, might be, it's 15 slides. I might decide, actually, I only want 10 slides. Again, I could go back and I can ask it, actually, can you make this 10 slides instead of 15? Or I could have told it right at the outset, create me a 10 slide presentation based on this document. Okay, so creating one from an existing file, you just simply put a /, it will convert. If you've had an ideas dump into a Word document with a bulleted list, you can ask Copilot to go and put that into a PowerPoint presentation for you. Okay, and then I can ask it about this presentation. And as you can see on the speaker notes, it gives me some notes and the original content. So the original content was just three points. It gives me some additional text that I can use as a prompt within my presentation. Okay, I'll just close PowerPoint. Don't need to save this. And then within Outlook, now I've got a very short email summary here, but it's just to give you the view of where I've mentioned you can ask Copilot to go and give you a quick summary of a very lengthy email chain. So within my email chain, I've got my Copilot summarize. Now this will be quite a short summary, but just to show you what it will do. So there are only 2 messages in this, but what it will do is when it summarizes, if there were dates or if anybody's agreed to do something by a particular date, it will pick those out and detail them. Where we've got numbers, it will show me which email it got this information from. So it's really, really quick and easy, but it can save you so much time of, I've got a huge lengthy email chain. I just need to get a sort of a grasp of what's being said. In one click and a few seconds, it will give you a breakdown of who's said what? Has anybody agreed any particular dates? Has anybody said that they're going to get back to somebody by a particular date? And it will pick all of that sort of detail out within your message. Okay, so that's a quick overview of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook. Now we'll have a look at Copilot as an online app, so where it sits within 365. So within this, I've just logged into 365. I can go through all my 365 apps and I've got Copilot. So again, like with the previous ones, it gives me some possible things that I might want to do. So stay informed. What's the latest from this particular person? Organize it by emails, chats and files that they've sent. Do I want to prepare for a meeting? In this case, it's picked up. I've got a placeholder in my calendar for the Copilot webinar. So again, Copilot, without me even asking it, has gone and looked at my calendar and said, actually, you've got a meeting today on the Copilot webinar. Do you want some help preparing for it? I can ask it, what's on my calendar for tomorrow? I might want to ask it to help me learn something. Stay on top of our AI, so summarize main points of the latest research, track what's important, and another one, summarize messages from my manager in the last 48 hours. Copilot would look to see who my manager is set as within our 365 environment. So within 365, some things that I can use it for. So for example, I've got some recent chats on this right hand side. So when you use Copilot on the web, it remembers things that you've asked it and it builds up your history. So you can go back. Now, one that I've used quite a few times is, from my emails over the past week, create a table of actions, including whose action it is, the person that assigned it, and when it's due. So I'm just going to copy and paste this to run it again. So I'm going to message Copilot to say I want it to go and look at my email over the past week, and I want a table of actions, including whose action, the person that assigned it, when it's due, and being more specific, I need it to have a good structure to organize my day, and I want it to be quite a concise little list. So I can ask it to go through and it will go and look through my email over the past week, and it will generate me a little table. Okay, so what it's found is creating a Quiss events calendar. It was assigned to me by Craig. There wasn't a due date. Granting access to subsites on an intranet, booking some dates, assisting with a macro, updating a template, booking exams, booking a Microsoft PowerPoint exam for somebody, and any dates that they've given me. And then it will give me, where did it find all of this information? But it gives me a very quick and easy little thing of, all these things were assigned to me over the past week. It's found them either in my inbox or in subfolders, tells me where it came from. Is there a due date? If so, when is it due? So it's a very quick and easy, help me sort out what I need to be doing. As I've mentioned at the outset, one of the other things that you can use it for is if you've missed a particular meeting, but you want to know what happened in a particular meeting. So I'm going to use an example of one of the Quiss Digital Academy webinars from last year, which was Microsoft Excel, the if function and conditional formatting. So I'm just going to copy and paste this rather than type it all out. So I want it to write me a summary of this webinar because I wasn't actually able to attend. So I want to include the date, the time, who was the organizer, attendees, any meeting notes, were there any follow-up tasks, the key discussion points, and I want the attendees and their role formatted into a table for me. Okay. So it's going to go and find that webinar. So very quickly, it's found it, the date and time. So just scroll back up. So it's picked it up. It was in September last year from 1 till 2 p.m. Rebecca was the organizer. Tells me who was an attendee, who was an organizer, gives me some detailed notes, that it focused on the use of the if function and conditional formatting, key discussion points, attendee follow-up tasks, and it even picks up that attendees were encouraged to practice with it. And it gives me a link to it. So I can then go back and ask it more questions. Can you provide more details on the follow-up session? Summarize the key points from the meeting notes. Listed additional attendees that haven't been mentioned. So again, I can drill down further into this information. Other things that I might want it to do. Let's say, for example, I want to schedule a meeting with a colleague. Now, I could go and look at our calendars, but what I'm going to do, just as an example, is I'm going to ask Copilot to go and see if it can find some available time for a meeting. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So what I'm going to ask it for is, I'm looking to schedule a meeting with Sabrina Griffin, who's a member of the Digital Academy here at Quiss. Can Copilot suggest any specific times that we're both available? We'll need around an hour. We're going to discuss some upcoming training tasks. So Copilot will go and check both of our calendars, and it will find any available time today. So even then asks, do I want it to schedule the meeting for one of these times? If so, let it know which one. So in which case I could say, okay, book it in for 3:30 till 4:30 this afternoon. Copilot would go and create me a meeting invite, and it would invite Sabrina to our 1 hour meeting between 3:30 and 4:30. As I say, without me needing to go and check whether Sabrina is available, Copilot will go and look at Sabrina's calendar and mine. Similarly, are there any available slots tomorrow? So I might, let's have a further look, and it will go and have a look tomorrow. If I decide actually they don't really work for me this afternoon, then tells me, okay, can't find any specific availability for tomorrow, but it goes and looks at our typical schedules to see very often you are both free at these times. And again, I might go back and say, okay, well, what about this week or next week? And again, I can ask it, and I can keep going backwards and forwards with this. But it saves me the time of having to go back to Sabrina's calendar and look. Then it finds me, okay, it's found some for next week. I could pick one of these and get Copilot to book it. Okay. So another example that I may want within the Copilot app is I want some help in drafting up a document template that I can use within meetings. So I'm just going to copy this prompt. So what I want is, I want a one-page template that I can use to take notes for a meeting. I need sections for the date, the topic, key points, and action items. So quite simple and concise of, this is what I want it to create for me. So Copilot will go and generate a sample for me. I can customize it. Can I create a digital version of it? Can I add an additional section? Even an example of filled out notes. But I could just simply copy this, paste it into a document. I've got my nicely laid out notes that I can then take to my meeting and fill out the detail. Okay. Couple of things just to make you aware of with Copilot and the web is just up at the top. We've got work and we've got web. Work will go and look in any of the SharePoint, OneDrive, 365 locations that I can access data. Web, I can use it, as you can see on here. If I'm going on holiday, interview tips, this is more go and find me information from the web. And you can flip between the two. So work-based will go and look at my work calendar. It'll check colleagues' calendars. What's the latest from a contact or a colleague? Whereas web is for more, it's general research. Okay, so that is Copilot for 365 apps. Now, I'll just bring my presentation back up. So moving along, as I'd mentioned, the iterative refinement of prompts. And what you will find is if you do take on Copilot licenses, the more you use it, the better it gets. It does learn the way that you ask questions, and it also learns how you prefer your results to be displayed and laid out. So some example prompts. So the one that I'd used, go and look at my emails over the past week. As you can see, it will very clearly go and find through all of my email, and it will pick out if I've been assigned any particular tasks. So the thing with the prompts is the goal of what is it that you want, the context, what's it for, who's involved, the source, where do I want it to go and look, and then the expectations. For example, I want it to be concise, avoid complex technical language, etc. Now, moving along to Copilot and data security. So the headline here is Copilot uses your existing 365 access permissions, and it can also access shared mailboxes. So when I tell it to go and check emails, if I've got access to somebody else's mailbox, Copilot can go and look through their mailbox as well. The important thing to note with this is if you're not particularly on top of your security and who has got access to what within your 365 environment, this can be a security issue because Copilot doesn't know whether it should or shouldn't go and pull information from a folder that you've got access to. As an example, the one that an awful lot of people ask about is, if I asked Copilot to go and collate me details of salaries for everybody in the organization, would it be able to do it? The answer is, if for any reason you have got access to a file or folder that contains the salary information of everybody in your organization, the answer is yes, it can, and yes, it will. What it won't do is say, are you sure you really need to get this confidential information? So it's the only real data security thing of, are you sure that people can only access the information that they should be accessing? Other points to note with Copilot, the data isn't published publicly anywhere, and it's not stored by Microsoft. So when I run a search and ask it to collate detail of a particular document, that information never leaves our 365 infrastructure. So it isn't posted up to Microsoft or shared anywhere online. Okay. The other thing Copilot won't do is it won't allow people to share information externally. It follows your internal security settings. So if you've got your 365 SharePoint, for example, environment to say you can't share externally, Copilot won't attempt to share externally, even if you ask it to. Okay. And then something called Copilot agents. Now, this is the sort of flip side to that initial security issue. So Copilot agents, they are new. They were sort of fully rolled out only in the last month or so. But you can create Copilot agents to sit within SharePoint sites. So for example, at Quiss, we're currently trialing this with our internal HR policies. So our HR policies sit on our internal intranet in a SharePoint library. We can create a Copilot agent that sits within that particular library. People can ask it questions and it will go and search through the HR policies in that library. It won't search anywhere else though. So this is where having Copilot to go and search through documents, if you're using an agent in a SharePoint environment, you can lock it down to tell Copilot, only look in this particular library of documents. Don't go off and look elsewhere. As it mentions, it adheres to each user's SharePoint permissions and your organizational policies. So even within a single document library within SharePoint, if you've locked down a user's access to a folder, Copilot will follow those access rules. So these agents are really useful, especially for things like internal documents. I want to be able to go and search in a particular SharePoint library for particular documents, and people can ask it effectively human-like questions, especially, as I say, useful around things like policies. People, let's be honest, don't read them, but if they did need to know something, you could use a Copilot agent. They can simply ask it a human language question. It will go and find the information for them. Okay, this will be touched on in more detail in one of our later webinars where we're looking at intranets and automation behind them. And then the final one, just to mention, is an introduction to an application called Viva Engage. So it's part of Microsoft's 365 suite. Viva Engage, as I've put in here, it's effectively, it's enterprise social networking. So the idea of it is, unlike Teams, where Teams chat is completely exclusive to the people in that chat. If you need to include other people, you have to invite them into the chat and choose how much information you're sharing. Viva Engage lets you create what it calls communities. These communities can be completely open, and the idea is they're for knowledge sharing. The reason I mentioned it with Copilot is Microsoft pushed Viva Engage as being a really helpful tool to go along with it. In that, with Microsoft Copilot, because it's so new, what a lot of organizations do is they put together a pilot group of people, perhaps 5 or 6 for Copilot licenses, trial it, see if it works for them. Viva Engage would allow you to create a Copilot community where people can share best practice. They can share examples of prompts that they've used. And the thing with this is, as more people get Copilot, these communities can be completely open to everyone in the organization. So where people come across a prompt that works really well, they can share it in Viva Engage. They're sharing it with the whole firm. They don't need to post it in a channel within Teams, which would probably be more departmental or company-wide. Viva Engage gives you this place where you can have discussions amongst peers from all different areas of your organization, but they can be completely open to everybody so that you can share these best practice. So just so that you can see an example. So within Engage, so in our demo tenant, Viva Engage can sit within Teams. So you don't need to navigate away from Teams. As I say, chat is exclusive to the people in that chat. Engage this is a conversation that's company-wide. In this case, Bob HR has found a link to an online training course. He can post it in here. Anybody within the firm can come into the Copilot best practice and ideas community. They can see posts that people have put in here. The other thing that you can have with Viva Engage within these communities, you can have experts. So they're an ideal place for things like Q&As of, in this case, we've got an expert on Copilot within here. So people can come in, they can post a question, the community expert can help them out. So this was set up by Mike Boss. So he's put in a tip. So for example, you can summarize long email threads by saying summarize this thread. People can respond. He can put in a post of why he's set it up, but you can also get detail of how many people have seen this. So you can get analytics of, are people interacting with this? And if they are, you can get detail of how many people are actually engaging with this particular community within Viva Engage. We will be running a separate breakout session in a couple of weeks, all around Viva Engage. So do keep an eye out. If you think this could be something that might be useful, have a look. Look out for the invite coming out. It's only going to be a sort of 30-40 minute session, but as you can see, it does link in with Teams, so it's not a case of here's yet another place we need to go and look for information. It all sits within the same 365 environment. Okay, and then finally, if anybody wants any online resource, we have got a couple of links. So if you would like links to any of these online resources, just drop a note into the chat, and we can send you links for things like scenario libraries from Microsoft. There's a Copilot lab on Microsoft. Again, takes you all through the art of prompting and best practice.